All right, hello everybody. Today we have my brief look at Ultima 6, especially looking at the writing. But before we go to the intro, which is kind of the bulk of what I want to talk about and how it grabs you and draws you into the game, let's talk a little bit about Ultima 6 itself. Ultima 6, The False Prophet, was released in, I believe, 1990 for, PC compatible computers. It made its way around the world in, I'll show a little footage here of the PC version. You can see that it's a little bit clunky, actually. Like there's the interface is a little bit messy, and you don't actually get to see very far. Like if you look here, you can only see 4 squares in each direction, which amounts to like something like 4 meters in each direction, which is not so bad when you're in the middle of a building inside of the city inside of one of the game cities. But another thing that Ultima 6 did that Ultima 5 did not do was it got rid of the map scaling between overworld and, like inside the city, inside the dungeon, inside the whatever. And so everything in Ultima 6 is at the same scale. And so you have to walk a long way across the road to get from Britain to Pause to, Scarabray. Whatever, something like that. Now, you can imagine that it might be okay to only have 4 meters of sight inside someone's house. You're just seeing a room, and the room's not larger than 8 meters by 8 meters. But as you journey across the world and you're going, through forests, being only able to see 4 meters ahead of your face is a little bit weird. And so, for instance, in later versions, adaptations of the game, such as the one that appeared in Japan in 1993 and then was ported back to the US on Super Nintendo around that time. They expanded, as you can see, the what would you call it? Your vision to the whole screen, so that the avatar is just a small sprite in the middle of a fairly large screen, and you can maybe see 8 meters in each direction instead of 4. The Super Nintendo version is the first one that I actually played because I didn't have a PC back then. I have fond memories of it. The copy that I had a bad battery, and so I ended up having to just restart it over and over again, but it was still fun to play. The Super Nintendo version had a lot of censorship. The PC version of Ultima 6 has a lot of dark humor, has some raunchy jokes, has some profanity. Those were all taken out, of course, for the Super Nintendo version to make the game kid-friendly. But like gameplay-wise, like as far as the mechanics of the actual gameplay go, there are some advantages to the Super Nintendo version. There are some disadvantages too. For instance, Ultima 6 on the PC had this ability to pick any one of your party members and move him or her around as individuals. It had the ability to move things around on the floor, and so if there was like a dresser, you could push it to another spot against the wall. If there's a treasure chest, you could push it along the ground to get it to a different place. It's one of those games that I played it a bunch on Super Nintendo, but I was never able to finish it because my game kept getting erased. And when I finally got it on PC, I never actually spent the time to actually play through the whole thing. I've played through a good chunk of it, but again, it's one of those things where I haven't actually sat down and gone through the whole thing from start to finish, without like a walkthrough kind of thing. Anyway, it didn't just come out on the Super Nintendo in Japan. In fact, it made it to a bunch of different of the Japanese home computers, including one called the Fujitsu FM Towns, which you may have heard of, you may not have. But the interesting thing about the Fujitsu version, the FM Towns version, was that it was fully voiced. And so here we'll cut to that for a second.
What wouldst thou speak of? I am Lord British, as thou knowest well. Thanks to thee, I sit once more upon the throne of Britannia, though 'tis a heavy burden in such troubled times as these. The gargoyles are indeed the greatest threat our realm has ever known. We are fortunate indeed that fate hath brought thee here in our hour of need. May fortune favor thee.
Yes, that is Lord British, voiced by Lord British, aka Richard Garriott. So, there's all kinds of fun stuff there. But let's set that aside, the history of the game, because what I really want to talk about is the writing in the game. Because the introduction to Ultima 6 is, I think, one of the... It's my favorite game intro of all time. If you ask me to show you my favorite game intro, I will point you towards this. It's not necessarily the most complex plot or most most fun game to play necessarily. It is a little bit cluttered actually, because Garriott was trying to do things like make the world more realistic, and so there's lots of little items on the ground all over the place. And the fact that there's no map scaling means that you can easily get lost in forests and things like that. That said, it is a lot of fun, and I probably should go through it all by myself one of these days and kind of go through it kind of in an organic way and make it all the way through. But yeah, this. Oh, and the one thing I want to mention before I go to the intro is that there's actually about 200 NPCs in the game, and they all, not all, but many of them have fairly complex conversation pathways to go through and multiple different things to talk to them about. It's a really cool game, and it was a really big advance, especially with the addition of MIDI music in even the PC version of the game, which Ultima 5 did not have. We get those crunchy MIDI harpsichords as we go through the intro. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the intro to Ultima 6. Upon your world, 5 seasons have passed since your triumphant homecoming from Britannia. You have traded the Avatar's life of peril and adventure for the lonely serenity of a world at peace. But television supermen cannot take the place of friends who died at your side. And so here we have the setting of the stage. Again, we're using that you language very intensely here. We're using very strong adjectives and nouns to describe things. The Avatar's life of peril and adventure. You're talking about your experiences in Ultimas 4 and 5. We're talking about the lonely serenity of a world at peace. It's kind of dull. We see here the Avatar sitting there watching television, random things show up on the screen. There's a nice little touch, actually. You can see the VCR clock on top of the TV. That's actually connected to your computer time, and so it would add a little extra hint of immersion when you played this game on your PC, assuming that you had the PC clock set properly, which you could get away without doing back in the day because your computer wasn't generally hooked up to the internet 24/7. Anyway, let's continue. Outside, a chill wind rises, and in moments the storm is upon you. Very few words here to describe something very interesting, right? We've always had some kind of disturbance in the air when we've gone to Britannia. And so here we have this chill wind and the storm coming upon you. And we can see it visually too, because there was a nice upgrade to the art in Ultima 6 as well. Continuing. Tongues of lightning lash the sky, conducting an unceasing crescendo of thunder. In a cataclysm of sound and light, a bolt of searing blue fire strikes the earth. Again, we have really strong, vivid language here. It's really pulling, I don't know if it's pulling you in, but its intention is to pull you in with this kind of vividness. We have some big words for a teenage kid, I guess, right? Which would have been the age that I would have been when this came out. Or I would have been 7 when this came out. So big for me then. Big for me when I played it on the Super Nintendo, I guess, right? But we got tongues of lightning, a very visual, very strong visual language there. An unceasing crescendo of thunder. It's likening the thunder to a music, to a conductor conducting an unceasing crescendo of orchestral music. A cataclysm, some nice alliteration there, of sound and light. A bolt of searing blue fire. Again, really good, solid language, using exactly the words that you want to talk about what is happening here. There's no wasted words here. They're all very, very well chosen. And then we have the next frame. Lightning among the stones. Is this a sign from distant Britannia? Again, your character, the character whose shoes you're being put into, is longing for that adventure again. The game is asking you to play along here. This is a really interesting thing. Instead of saying, "Hey, you're awake," right? It's like, you are in this situation. You want this. Play along with me, and I'll play along with you. It's a transaction between the game and the player, which helps to draw you in a little bit more careful or strongly if you're willing to play along, right? You can kind of feel yourself like, man, I love playing Ultima 5, and man, if there's a new adventure, I totally want to be in on that. And so you put yourself in those shoes, and you're like, man, if I can get to another adventure in Britannia, then I'm going to do it, right? It's really great. And here we have the next frame. You bolt from your house, stumbling, running blind in the storm, into the forest, down the path, through the rain, to the stones. Now here we have two great bits of writing here. First off, it's explaining to you how desperate you are, how desperate the game wants you to be, how it wants you to kind of put yourself in these shoes. You're playing the part of a character, of a person who had these adventures and longs for them, and the chance to possibly see another one makes you bolt from your house, probably barely putting your shoes on, into a rainy night, running blind into the storm, and then we've got into the forest, down the path, through the rain, to the stones. You feel that rhythm there? 3 words. Over and over and over again, as you, it's like the rhythm of running down the path itself. It's beautiful. Near the stones, the smell of damp, blasted earth hangs in the air. In a frozen moment of lightning-struck daylight, you glimpse a tiny obsidian stone in the midst of the circle. Again, no wasted words here. Near the stones, now we have like smell language, damp, blasted earth, that smell of wetness, and yet that smell of burning at the same time, making you think of like being out in the middle of nowhere with, on a rainy day with just a campfire. That kind of mixture of smells. It brings you out of the place where you're at and into this kind of wilderness state of mind, if you'll let it take you. Then you find this tiny obsidian stone. Wondering, you pick it up. And from the heart of the stones, a softly glowing door ascends in silence. Exultant memories wash over you as you clutch the stone. When last you saw an orb such as this, it was cast down by Lord British to banish the tyrant Blackthorn. Now we have a little twist here. Actually, let's do the next line too. But your joy soon gives way to apprehension. The gate to Britannia has always been blue as the morning sky. Okay, so not only do we have a possible path to Britannia, but we have a twist. It's not like when we went there before. We have this moon orb, right? Or what's it called? I think it's called a moon orb. This is something that Lord British used to banish Lord Blackthorn. This is not the same thing that got you to Britannia before, but it might get you there, and you don't know exactly whether it's going to get you there or not. The language here is pulling at your mystery strings. Basically, it's saying, well, this orb, I never got one of these orbs before. The only place I've seen one of these orbs was to banish someone. That's not a good sign, is it? I don't know. Then you've got the gate itself. We've seen the blue gates, and now we have a red one. What could that possibly mean? Again, the language is trying to pull you into a state of wonder, of curiosity, and asking you to play along as the character playing the role of this avatar. Abruptly, the portal quivers and begins to sink into the ground. Its crimson light wanes. We have a ticking clock here. Not a very long one either. There's a lot of places where like, we only have 1 hour to do this, or this is going to crash into this in 13 hours. No. In this one, we aren't given the ticking clock 13 hours in advance. We're given it seconds in advance. And you have to make your choice now. And that's beautiful, I think. And it's not overdone, too, because a lot of the time if you do these long ticking clocks, it can hang over your head. And you have to think about, like, okay, well, this took this long, and then you had to walk over here, and that took half an hour. And so, no. We keep it short. We keep it in there. We get in and we get out with that ticking clock, which is, better than making some long interminable one and like having a bunch of contrived stuff to make things work out in that period of time. Desperation makes the decision an easy one. Again, the game is saying you are desperate for this adventure again. You want it so bad that even when the signs are all wrong, you're willing to give it a shot. That kind of, I don't know, it just works. Like if you enjoyed the previous games, or even if you, in an abstract sense, feel like your life is lacking in adventure, it's saying to you, you want to be a part of this. This is something that's going to be a good experience for you. This is something that you're going that even if things are a little bit off, you're willing to cast your doubts aside and go for it. All right? No. So we have an image of the avatar walking into the gate. It's nicely animated in the original PC version, and that is the end of the intro before you create your character. This sequence shows up when the game starts, right? And then what you do is you create your character, or you import your character from the previous game, and then you go into the next stage of the intro, and this is where things get really interesting. Here we go. Dazed, you emerge from the portal to find yourself standing on a desolate plain. Nearby rests a massive, rune-struck altar, shrouded in moonlit fog. Again, not adjective overload, not, noun overload, but high precision. We have moonlit fog. We have a rune-struck altar. We have a massive rune-struck altar. We have a desolate plain. Everything is described in a way that makes you visualize a little bit better. And of course, the art that the game gives you helps to kind of seed crystal your imagination as well. We continue. At first, the plain is still. Then, 100 voices raise a slow, death-like song, drawing closer and closer with each passing moment. You are seized by an urge to run, but you have no place to go. The characters that we saw in Ultima 5 that we weren't really able to interact with in any meaningful way other than to combat them, the gargoyles, we now have... Because in Ultima 5, the avatar appeared in the middle of a forest, and everything was a little off, but it was okay. It was still Britannian forest. The Shadow Lords showed up, they attacked Shamino, and then the quest begins from there, kind of thing. In this, the avatar shows up somewhere where he's not familiar with it. There's this massive plain, there's this rune-struck altar, and then all of a sudden, you're all alone, and you're surrounded by a mass of some of the most difficult enemies that you fought in 5. Just 100 of them, 100 voices. But they don't attack, not yet. No. But they do encircle you. They drive you in toward that altar and capture you. Continuing. Before you can offer a protest to the creatures who surround you, scaly claws grasp your body. Again, using the right words. The word grasp is exactly the right word for what these gargoyles are doing to you. Before you can offer a protest, not before you can say a word, which is too vague, before you can offer a protest. Again, every single word is chosen, well, not, I mean, like, the ofs and the tos and stuff maybe are not chosen carefully, but every word of substance is chosen carefully, at least in my perspective. With unearthly strength, the monsters bind you to the altar stone. Okay, now things are looking really bad. You were hoping, you might have been hoping, that you could negotiate your way out of this. You are, after all, the Avatar. You are the hero of this world. But that's the thing. In Ultima 5, you were not the hero for the gargoyles. You weren't allowed to be. You weren't given a path to make that kind of diplomatic exchange. And so now you've kind of dug yourself into a hole. The gargoyles do not like you. And you know why, because you were part of it in Ultima 5. Anyway. Kneeling, the hordes sway and chant as a stately winged nightmare steps forward. Now we already have pictures of them, we know that they're gargoyles, but stately winged nightmare I think is a beautiful phrase there. And then we've got the actions of the crowd. They're swaying, they're chanting. There's something ritualistic about this, and you don't like being on the end of this ritual, basically. The leader unwraps a velvet-covered, brass-bound book and recites from it in a formal, stilted tongue. Now this is interesting because velvet-covered, brass-bound book, right, is what you would be seeing from that perspective. Those are the things that you would tell. You wouldn't be able to see what the characters in it look like. It's too far away. But no, you can see that it's wrapped in velvet. You can see that it's bound in brass. And so again, it's putting you in this position of this person who's tied to an altar and awaiting whatever fate comes to him. Continuing. Shouts and jeers, again, really beautiful language, explode from the masses as the priest slams shut the book. In his hand, a malignant dagger drips with moonlight. Again, very good visual, very good descriptive language. Malignant dagger drips with moonlight. Slams shut the book. These are all really strongly written to use few words, but to get the point across in a very detailed way. Here we go. And here's the part that always gets me. You close your eyes. A dying scream, certainly your own, curdles the air. Cat calls. The dagger. A scream. Death. Pandemonium. Shrieks of rage, of terror. From the inevitable, an impossibility emerges. You are still alive. So freaking good, man. Just cutting away from the full sentences to just little words, little snippets of what you're experiencing as you close your eyes in abject terror of the death that's descending upon you, and just the way that things turn, because there was already kind of pandemonium. This crowd was shouting and jeering and kneeling and swaying and chanting, and now there's something going on, but your eyes are closed. You're waiting for that dagger to come, and it never comes. Instead, silent red light fills the darkness. There is the wooden clack of a crossbow, and a violet-fletched rose blooms in the priest's barren forehead. Again, a lot of figurative language here. Instead of a crossbow bolt hits him in the head, a crossbow bolt takes him by surprise in the head. We have a violet-fletched rose, a bloody crossbow bolt, blooms, erupts from the priest's barren forehead. We have the wooden clack of a crossbow. You can kind of feel that sound. As you read the words "wooden clack," it comes from deep in your mind. And here we have the real twist. Friendly faces vault from a newborn moon gate, while a rain of quarrels holds the furious mob at bay. The Knight Dupre's sword flashes twice in the darkness, slicing away your bonds. Quickly, old friend, to the gate! Accompanied by the swordsman Shimino and a grinning, crossbow-wielding Iolo the Bard, Dupre thrusts a spare sword into your hand. Snatching the fallen priest's book, Iolo dives into the redness with Shimino at his heels. The howling throng surges forward, all of one terrible mind. The gate wanes rapidly as you and Dupre charge through, but not rapidly enough. Here, right before we get to the very end of this intro, we have another ticking clock. And again, it's a ticking clock with a few seconds, and it's a ticking clock that you can't control that you have no control over the full ramifications of. Yes, it closes, but not rapidly enough. From the mob's vanguard, 3 of the abominations scramble toward the gate. Driven by fury, the creatures hurl their bodies into the portal's last handspan of light. So here we see that the part of the ticking clock that you could control, you're getting through it. Yeah, you were fast enough for that, but guess what? It didn't close fast enough to stop the gargoyles from coming after you. And after you finish this intro, you basically spawn in the world, in a fight, in Lord British's throne room with 3 gargoyles, and the story starts from there. Now, the thing about this that I want to especially underline is how we avoided the exposition dump that we got in the intro to Ultima 5. In Ultima 5, we had about 2,000 words, in 29 screens of description of stuff. In this one, yeah, we have a lot of screens. There's even more screens than in Ultima 5, but the number of words is less than the intro to Ultima 4. It's something like 500. 500 precisely, beautifully chosen words to draw you into the game, to ask you to play this role, to bring you in and to start the game, and then the exposition happens as you talk with Lord British and the other denizens of Lord British's castle, the people of Britain, the people of the other cities in Britannia. That way you get to go through the exposition at your own pace and in an organic way where you're talking to a person rather than having a bunch of quotes from Iolo, talking to you for several minutes. And in fact, some of the exposition is given by Iolo, but again, in a better way than simply printing out a bunch of text without an interaction. In Ultima, every time you want to talk to somebody, you have to ask them for topics, name, job, join, history, stuff like that, right? You have to give these code words to the people to get them to talk back. And so if you want more exposition, you can delve deeper in with more code words. And if you don't feel like the exposition, then you can just say bye. And so this, I think, is like the pinnacle of Ultima writing. Not only do we have this really well-written, really beautiful, almost poetic in places, introductory text. We have the game asking you in a very visceral way to play along, to play the role that you're being asked to play, to be a part of this world. We have, instead of a big exposition dump, we have the way that you feel, the things that you're seeing, the things that you're feeling, the desperation that brings you to throw yourself into that red moon gate, even though you know it's all wrong. We have so much going on here that is just, really beautiful. And then, do we get the exposition dump when we would expect it? No. You get it at your own pace in a way that suits you and your needs and your desire for pacing, as you choose. We've taken a little bit of agency from the player. We've said we want you to play this role, but then when we start actually telling you the story. And we've seeded a few emotions in you. We've said that you're desperate to get back to Britannia. We've said that you're friends with these people. We've said that you're terrified by these gargoyles. And if you're willing to play along, the rest of the game is going to play as you wish. And it's a solid, long game where there's like 200 NPCs to play around with, to learn their backstories, to figure out what part they play in the quest that you're on. Figuring out exactly what you're supposed to be doing is a little bit more difficult, even than 5, because you're not given this immediate here you got to do this. You get some basic ideas from Lord British about what you should be doing to start, but then things get more complicated, and that's why I haven't ever actually gone through this game from start to finish, is because I always find myself writing down notes, and then I set the game down for a while, and when I come back, I'm like, what was I doing? Oh hell, right? So this is one of those things where. At the same time, I've probably played the game for 100 hours, just the first, chunk of the game over and over again, because I keep forgetting where I'm going and getting lost in the quest. I can't recommend. So I talked about Ultima 4, I talked about Ultima 5, I talked about Ultima 6. They're all worthy games to play. I think anyone who feels like they might be interested in this kind of computer role-playing game should play these games. They're fantastic. But Ultima 4 has that great intro that really draws you in and makes you part of the world. Ultima 5 is a little bit clunkier in the intro, but has a really well done game world that is full of intrigue and double crossing and stuff like that. And Ultima 6 brings the intro to a whole new level. Fewer words, more screens, graphics, music, everything, and then puts you into a world that seems alive to a certain degree, and seems perhaps more contiguous, since there's no world map, town map, world map, town map, world map, town map thing happening. You just explore the whole world at its own scale, at your own pace, and you talk with these 200 different characters. And if you're playing the FM Towns version, then you get to hear them actually talk, some of them. I don't know. I think that this intro is a brilliant masterstroke of writing. And, if you can, while writing, choose your words as carefully and as effectively as Richard Garriott chose his words here, I think that you are going to do a good job of drawing in your reader and making them visualize the things that are happening, making them feel like they're actually seeing a living world. And this is one of those things that games can do that books don't necessarily do, is that the game is asking you to play a part in this story, which means that you will have some kind of agency. It takes away a little bit of your agency early on. It says, we want you to feel like this. We're putting you in the shoes of a character who feels like this. So will you do that for us? And if you do, we're going to give you an experience that you're never going to forget. Because it gives you your agency back once the intro's over. I don't know. This is really, really good in my... I feel like this is something that doesn't get enough, credit. I don't know. And the funny thing is that even though the intro is so good and that you get a lot of agency and there's a lot of cool NPCs to play around with, the game itself is really complicated and actually difficult to figure out by yourself the whole way through it. You write down a whole bunch of notes on your journal, in a notebook, and you're like, okay, I need to do this, but how? And you wander. Because there's no world map, wandering around the world takes a lot more time, which again means that you eventually are like, okay, I'm gonna go. I can't play this anymore. I have to go do this other thing. And then you come back and you forget where you're at. Anyway, I don't know. Doing this video is making me want to actually go through this thing from start to finish, because it is really, really cool. And it's one of those things that I really should do. Anyway, I've taken up enough of your time. I just wanted to give a feel for how carefully chosen the words are in this intro and how effective they are. And this is indeed my favorite. If you ask me, hey, what do you think what game do you think had the coolest intro? It's like this. Absolutely this one. So yeah, that's all I've got for today. We're gonna cover Final Fantasy. Oh God. I'm sorry. We're going to cover Ultima 7, not Final Fantasy 7. We're going to cover Ultima 7 next week. I was thinking about it yesterday, and I'm like, I think that I can do quite a bit with Ultima 7 that doesn't require me to rope in Ultima 8 in the same week. So next week we'll have a video on Ultima 7. Ultima 7 is an interesting game because it has two parts, and they're both they're both standalone effectively, but at the same time they're they flow one into the other kind of thing. But the situation that you find yourself in both of them is very different. And this is where we see the Avatar starting to stray from the roots of Ultima 4, Quest of the Avatar, and discover that different worlds sometimes have different rules. So I'll leave you with that. Ultima 6, fantastic conclusion to a trilogy, fantastic intro, difficult game, easy to get lost, but still a lot of fun, and popular around the world, so much so that there's a full-voiced version, or moderately full-voiced version over on the Fujitsu FM Towns of all things, in English. There's Japanese voices too, but the fact that they did the English voices, I think is just a hilarious little fact. Anyway, that's what I got for today. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed kind of my nerding out over Ultima 6. I've been wanting to do this for a while. And like, I was like, well, if I'm going to nerd out about Ultima 6, I should probably nerd out about the whole trilogy at minimum, because 4, 5, 6 form one of the most interesting, like, CRPG trilogies that I think I've ever experienced. And so, yeah, as always, thanks again. Have a good weekend. And, if you like the channel, if you like what I'm doing here, you know what to do. And I will see you next week. We're going to talk about Ultima 7. We're going to talk about the twin paradox, and assuming I can get all the math done, and we're gonna maybe do something else. Who knows? Anyway, have a good one, and I'll see you next time.